Some of you might have seen on our Instagram account that Alan and I went to Moab, Utah to do the very first edition of a new Trans Rockies race series event called Moab Run the Rocks. The event was 3 days in the trails of Moab, and you could run either the full pint or the slightly shorter half pint. Don't be fooled by the name, though. You run more than half the distance in the half pint. Alan and I decided to run together. We're running along on our first day, admiring the red rocks and the arid climate vegetation. Then suddenly, we see the author that we're scheduled to interview today. We were already pumped full of endorphins at this point, and our guest today ended up getting a sweaty mid-race hug from two complete strangers. Hi, and welcome to Running Book Reviews podcast, where we review books written for runners, about runners, and by runners to help you decide if you would like to read the book for yourself. We also hope that listening to us chat about running can help keep you motivated about your own running or maybe inspire you to try something new. My name is Liz, and with my co-host Alan, we're going to talk with author Mirna Valerio about her book, A Beautiful Work in Progress.
A Beautiful Work in Progress is Mirna's memoir of the story of how she got into ultra running. Although the book starts with her running, she does go back to her childhood and talks about her family and how she grew up surrounded by cousins and spent time outside with everybody and got very outdoorsy. Mirna grew up in a body-positive environment where all the women who surrounded her were curvy and where she was never described as fat until much later in life. She also watched her mother lose both her best friend and her youngest brother to heart attacks, and she's made it her mission to stay active so that she can stay healthy, but without a focus on weight loss. By the end of the book, Mirna is successful in her first 100K race at the Javelina 100. But if you're already following her on social media, then you know that that is not where her sporting journey ends. So let me tell you a little bit about Mirna before we introduce Mirna. Mirna Valerio is a native of Brooklyn, New York, and a former educator and cross-country coach, ultramarathoner, cyclist, and newish skier, REI practitioner, and author of the memoir we are talking about today, A Beautiful Work in Progress. She began running in high school, recommitted to the sport after a health scare in 2008, maybe we'll hear something about that, and started her blog, Fatgirlrunning, about her experiences as a larger woman in a world of thinner endurance athletes while training for her first marathon. Mirna's athletic story has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Runner's World, on NBC Nightly News, CNN, and in the viral documentary short REI Presents The Mirnavator. Her writing has been featured in Women's Running, Self, Outside, and Runner's World. In 2018, she was chosen as National Geographic Adventurer of the Year, and in early 2020 appeared on the Kelly Clarkson Show and Access Daily, and most recently was featured on the Today Show. Her partners include LLBean, Bronco, Lululemon, Salsa Cycles, InsideTracker, Flask, and Garmin. She currently lives and trains in Vermont, actually not far from where we are in Montreal, Canada, and is wholeheartedly enamored and obsessed with downhill skiing. Oh, new passion. So welcome to the show, Mirna.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your show. And it is true, I am absolutely obsessed with skiing. And I'm kind of upset it's getting warmer now.
Oh, and you live in the perfect place now, too.
I do.
You live in Vermont.
Oh, yeah.
That's because you've just recently discovered skiing, or you've just gotten into an area where you can ski?
I started skiing 3 seasons ago. So in early 2021, I started skiing, and it is, I would say it's changed my winter life in many, many ways. And it is something I have been looking forward to. Like now I'm really sad, like trying to plan a trip out west to maybe get some last bits of snow, maybe out in Palisades, Tahoe or something like that. But it just brings such joy to me. And I'd rather be outside in the winter. And that's something that allows me to do that. So.
Well, there's a small ski season in Australia where I used to live in summertime here. It's wintertime there. Mm-hmm. So all you got to do is get on a plane for 24 hours.
Or Chile or Argentina or something like that.
those kind of places, yeah.
True, yeah. You could go there. It's probably
Okay,
easier on the time change.
So this is not this podcast is not called skiing book reviews. So,
although I might write a book about skiing,
so
no one would be surprised.
It is running book reviews. So let's talk a little bit about your book that we're covering today, A Beautiful Work in Progress. What made you decide to write this, Mirna?
So I have always been a writer since I was small. I actually started grad school for writing. Back when I was a teacher, I used to be a Spanish teacher and a music teacher. And I went to grad school to focus on nonfiction or sort of creative nonfiction writing. I did not finish that program because life gets in the way very often, especially when you have a small child that's always sick. So yeah, I was planning, I'd always been planning on writing a memoir. Did I know the memoir would be about running? No. And so I had this blog called Fatgirlrunning, which you mentioned in the beginning, and I had started it when I was training for my first marathon in 2011. That marathon was the Marine Corps marathon, and I really wanted to not only chronicle my training, but also to tell stories about how people reacted to me, to seeing a plus size Black woman in a half marathon start line, a marathon start line, or any other kind of start line. And I wrote positive stories. I wrote stories about the negative things that people would say. And as that blog got more noticed, as I wrote in it over a couple of years, it got in the hands of a reporter at Wall Street Journal, and that sort of snowballed into now everybody's reading my blog. I don't think it's like the greatest writing or anything. And then my story goes public with Runner's World and NBC Nightly News. And so I started getting requests and queries about whether or not I was interested in writing a book. And I, as I said, I wasn't planning on writing a book about running. And that's actually what the folks that were reaching out to me, they were like, oh, well, we'd love you to write a book about how to run. And that's boring. I'm sorry, I don't want to write that book. I don't need to write that book. There's so many books out there. Actually, my friend Martinez has written a book about how to run. It's great, it's funny, but I didn't want to write that kind of book. I really was into memoir and nonfiction. So I ended up with an agent who actually sold Barack Obama's first book.
Oh, nice.
Name drop.
Yeah.
She's amazing. And so we worked together to craft a proposal. And in it, I wanted it to be more than a glorified race report. I wanted to include all of the things that made me who I am, not just as a runner, but as a person, as a whole human being, because I think sometimes that's missing from running memoirs. And so yeah, that's how the book came about. And it is, people write to me, I get at least 1 or 2 messages per week. Still, this 2023, the book was published in 2017, and I think that's pretty good. And it's awesome that people are still reading the story and hopefully getting inspired and motivated to start their own running journey or fitness journey or whatever it is that they are curious about, that they're scared about. It's really great to see that it's still having an effect on people.
And what was it like to actually write a book? Because, just the process of writing, and I think at the time, I guess your son was probably still small. So you have family and you have work and you have sports, and now you're going to write a book. So how was that?
Yeah. So it was a process. It was a process. I would say it's an easier process. I'm actually writing another book now, and it's killing me. That process didn't kill me as much as this one is, but when I got my book deal, it was towards the end of a school year. So I was a teacher, and so I had the summer. The summer for me was much more flexible than the school year. I still had to work, but what I did was they gave me 4.5 months to finish it. That's not a long time.
No.
But because I had these flexible months, I could actually, and my son was in camp. So I sent my son away to summer camp, which is a very Northeast thing to do. We send our kids away for 7 to 8 weeks over the summer so that we can work and we can have our own summers. And so I stayed at my parents' in Brooklyn. And what I would do is I'd go to the gym, do my workout for a couple of hours, and then I'd take a shower, sit in the sauna. It was a whole process. Get ready to write. I would go to the cafe, write for a couple of hours, and they got to know me there. So they would bring me coffee as I was writing. Oh, this is for
Oh,
the author.
amazing.
This is for the author. It
Oh,
was so
nice.
cool.
That is so
And
good.
yeah, it was so cool. And so I would write there probably like 4 or 5 days a week, not every single day. And I would take some days off. And I got most of it finished before school started again. But it also, as as I was completing it, I had to get an extension. As I was completing it, I started having heart palpitations.
Oh
And
no.
because of the massive bout of anxiety that I had. So I went to go see a cardiologist. Uh, Obviously, there's a story in the book about a cardiologist. This is a different one. I went to go see this doctor, and he asked me, so, what's all of your testing is normal. What is going on in your life right now? Well, I have 2 weeks to submit my
Everything.
book.
Oh no.
Well, I just had to submit my book. It was the beginning of school is crazy as a coach, as a teacher, as I was the head of diversity, equity, and inclusion at the school. There were so many things going on. My kid is also in school at this point. He was, I don't even remember how old he was, but he was a preteen at this point. And, I've got his school stuff to worry about. And also, I am beginning this trajectory of traveling to speak everywhere, to do races, to do all sorts of events while I was still a teacher. And so all of this is sort of on my shoulders. And and so the doctor said, okay, so you have a book to finish in 2 weeks. Okay, that explains a lot of it.
Everything.
Everything. And then also, how many cups of coffee are you drinking a day? I said, well, it's just a pot of coffee. He's like, you can't do that. So I had to decrease my caffeine consumption. And it was the really cool thing about this was that October, the end of October of 2016, that I had to hand in the manuscript. I finished a manuscript surrounded by my cousins and her kids in her apartment in Washington, D.C. And it was the day before the Marine Corps Marathon. And it was just such a poignant moment. And I just felt this huge sense of relief and contentment and happiness and warmth, because I was surrounded by my cousin and her family, and they were like congratulating me, and they watched me type in the last sentence, which was really cool.
Yay.
And so that was the first part of the writing journey. And then the part that kills your ego it's the next part,
Redrafting.
all of the editing and revising and stuff. But yeah, it was what an experience.
Yeah. So all in all, do you remember like how long that was? Because they gave you 4 months, but then I guess like the editing and everything, that must have been another like several months.
Yeah. So I delivered the first manuscript in first draft October of 2016. And then it goes through a couple of edits. You have your first major soul crushing developmental edit where this actually what I did was I opened up the email with the revisions in it by the editor, who was fantastic, by the way. His name was Chad Sievers. And I opened the document, and there was so much red.
Oh no.
That I immediately closed the document, and then I didn't look at it for another 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
I was in a hotel room because I had been at a conference, and I was like, oh, I won't be. No, I can't do this now, to my heart. But then when I finally opened it, a lot of the red was just little things. But then there were some bigger things that I needed to think about and write about. And so I got that second one in, that first edit in. And then the second one took another 2 weeks or so. Obviously, there were fewer things. And then the third one was just really quick. They only gave me 2 days.
Oh, wow.
over New Year's to do it.
No.
And then it goes through a legal edit. Make anyone that you mentioned has to have give their consent. I had to get consent from my son.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Right? So he got on the phone with a lawyer and gave his verbal consent. And then a couple of my former students too. So that was kind of cool. And they were also very honored to be included in the book. And then, you go through a copy edit, a line by line edit, and then the acquisitions editor does a final edit. Yeah, it's a really long process, which I think a lot of people don't realize, especially when you're going through a publishing house. I don't know what the process is if you self-publish, but definitely going through a publishing house, there are all these stipulations and all these things that you have to go through. And then there's still, you've got to okay the book cover, but it's really, they're going to choose what's going to sell. And so for me, there was a whole thing about my cover initially, not the one that I have now, but the initially looking like Aunt Jemima, which is like this racialized figure, in the States. And and so I said, I had to put on my DEI hat and say, this doesn't work. Here's why. And they were like appropriately apologetic. And then you have to start doing the publicity part where they give you a publicist who has you write for some magazines, or they give excerpts to magazines, or you do interviews, podcast interviews. It's a whole thing, news interviews, or and so and it's exciting too. It's as exhausting as it is, it's exciting because you're getting your story out there. People are going to read it.
And I guess it's gone through like multiple approval processes. Like it's kind of gone through kind of like an approval. So you're like, well, it's got to succeed now, right?
Oh, I better, because all this work I'm putting in. I didn't realize it was like this much work beyond the actual writing. But and then the publishing date, the pub date was October 1st of 2017. And right before that, my REI video came out. So there was a lot of Mirna and the Mirnavator in the sort of public arena. And so it came out at a really good time. And it's like several times it's been on the Amazon bestseller list, which is, I mean, that's so cool, right? I don't care about the New York Times.
Well, a lot of people get their stuff from Amazon now. I mean,
exactly. So I do care about the New York Times bestseller list, but maybe next time.
It's amazing because we've done about 70 books now. You're the first kind of author we've spoken to, I don't know, 50 authors or something. And you're the first author who's actually described the whole process to us in some level of detail. And it's absolutely fascinating and a bit daunting.
I mean, we've kind of heard how long it can take. Like it can take sometimes years to write a book, depending. I don't know about it. I don't think anybody's ever told us about the whole legal process. Like I had no idea. Like that. Man. I mean, I can't even imagine going back afterwards and being like, you finished your book, and you included all these people. And what if someone says no? Like,
yeah. And then, so you don't write about them, or you change the details about them. And it was so funny when they asked my son over the phone, and he was like, yes, I give my verbal consent as a preteen. Because they could turn around and sue you.
Did he ask for a retainer? Like
yeah, my son is a businessman. I'm sure he has a document for me to sign that includes a retainer.
So we heard all about the book, and we know it contains running, but tell us a bit about your love affair with running. I mean, what, as you said before, you're not the image that pops into everybody's head when you talk about, imagine a trail runner. I think most people imagine some skinny white guy,
white dude,
looks kind of underfed and overexposed to the elements, and then we've got Mirna. We've got Mirna, who is like almost the antithesis.
I am not a skinny white dude.
She's not a skinny white dude.
Good thing.
She's not all craggy. She's got flawless skin. I
don't have a beard or flannel. I mean, I have lots of flannels. LLBean is one of my sponsors. But
tell us how you got into running. What attracted you to it? And
sure.
Yeah.
I started running in high school as a field hockey and lacrosse athlete. The reason, and I read about this in the book, about my coach, Coach Harrop, who I incidentally saw a couple of years ago at a dinner, and she didn't know that she was in my book, and because I didn't know how to find her. She wasn't on social media. It was a really cool moment. But I tried out for the field hockey team in 1989 when I was 13. And this is a new school to me. And I really wanted to play a team sport. I didn't want to be inside. I wanted to be outside. And field hockey was something that seemed intriguing to me. And so, but you
didn't really know what it
was about. So no, I didn't know at all. I mean, all I knew was that it was a weird kind of ice hockey without the ice. And so I went and tried out. Yeah. I went and tried out, and it was really difficult. I'd never had to move that much in my life, or like to move athletically that much in my life. We had to warm up on the field, and the warm up was just under a mile. I don't know what that is in Ks.
1.6.
And then okay, 1.6 Ks, y'all. Then we then did some stretches and some getting to know you games, and then we had to do a timed mile on campus, in this campus that I was at a couple of days ago, because I'm on the board of trustees there at the school, and it's a very hilly campus. So we had to do this mile, and I just felt like I was dying. I had to keep running, and they're running behind us. Okay, look, keep going, you got it. I'd never had to do that before. So we finished that timed mile. So by this time we're 2 miles in, and then we do 2.5 hours of practice. And that practice included doing line drills. They used to be called suicides, where you go from one end to the middle, to the back, to the end, to the 75 line, and then and you do it in sprinting the entire time.
Yeah, I remember that from gym class.
And I felt like my heart was in my physical heart was in my throat. And I also have asthma. So like that was a thing. And we're on grass. And I, again, had not ever done that much running. And so as we are doing this line drill, the coach comes up to me, and I'm like, oh no, well, I know she's going to say thanks, but no thanks. You don't know what you're doing. You're too slow. Please go do community service or do something else, or try out for the dance team. And so I'm mentally preparing for her to say this to me as she runs up to me, because she's been running up to everybody and people are nodding. And so she starts talking, and I'm like, oh no, I can't even talk because I can't breathe. So she's like, hey, and I'm like, nodding. And she's like, yeah, you're new here from Brooklyn, right? Yeah. He's like, this is hard. This is really hard. I get it, but you're still here. That means you want to be here. So good job, keep it up. And then she runs to somebody else.
Oh, wow.
And that was, I know that's not the experience that a lot of people have when they are trying out for sports, especially these days, because they tend not to be very inclusive of people who don't already know how to play the sport. Like, had I been born in a different year, different decade, I would probably not have had that experience. And if I been at a different school. And so I get really emotional when I talk about
That's nice.
because it opened up a whole new world to me. And then I got on the team, and I could not believe it. And so I vowed to myself, after I saw the list of who was on the team, I was going to get better at it. I was going to become fitter, so, and the thing that I had the most trouble with was running, because it was so much running up and down the field, and not just with my own body, but I had to have a mouth guard and a stick and a ball, and I had to learn how to do all that. And I was just so intrigued by the sport, so I ran the next morning. It was so painful. I was a boarding school, so I'm up in the dorm, and so I got up at 5 o'clock. I'm an early riser, just not today. I rolled down to the hill, to the field hockey field, and I walked, which is what I do today, around the field 5 times, which is what we had to do. And then I went back up to my dorm, showered, and had breakfast, and went to school. And I started doing that a couple of days a week, and I got better. And like, I did it of my own accord. That's just kind of what I do. I look at something, I'm like, oh, okay. Even if I don't see people like me doing it, I just do it because I don't care. I know other people aren't like that, and other people need to see representations of themselves, but I'm so curious that I'll skip that whole step, right? And so I went out there, and I did that for a couple of days a week. I got fitter, I got faster, then played lacrosse, did the same thing. And I also just wanted to emulate the spirit and energy of my coach, because she would just kind of bop around. I thought she was so cool. and then she'd run uphill and talk while she was running uphill. And I was like, I want to be able to do that. I want to
be that fit. Yeah.
I can't do that. I can't run up. Don't try to talk to me while I'm running uphill. This is for my coach. Coach, don't do it. It's always talking to me. But it was that series of events that made me a runner.
That's
And
amazing.
so, yeah.
I love your coach because I think, and also, I mean, I love your attitude, because I think that's probably what makes you such a great role model and so inspirational to a lot of people is that like, you don't seem to take no for an answer. I mean, repeatedly in your book, that's what happened, and just, the way you describe your life, like with your family, and having family that's died because of cardiac issues, and you're deciding that you're not going to follow that same path. Before we get into all of that, so how did you end up going from field hockey to buying your first pair of running shoes? And like, what was the feeling? What was the experience like? I mean, I remember my first pair of real running shoes.
They were a pair of forest green Adidas. Well, it was the summer after high school, and I was finally going to buy something that was not a hand-me-down or something that I just found on the clearance rack. And so I went to a shoe shop on the Upper East Side of New York City, because I had worked at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, so it was right there. And went into the store, and I had been running. I'd run in Central Park because of the museum is right on the park, so I would go run on the park. I would try to rollerblade, that which was not successful at all.
You tried, though. You tried.
I did try, but I did not look as cool as the other people who were rollerblading. I should have had wrist protectors. And anyway, so I was running. I was running in the morning, and it was probably just under 2 miles that I was running, because we didn't have Garmin's back then, or Polar watches or anything like that. And so I would run around my neighborhood, come in for a shower, then go to work, or I would run after work. And I said, I really need a pair of shoes. And I was making pretty good money for an 18-year-old. I actually was 17 at that point. I went to the shop on 3rd Avenue, and I don't think it's there anymore. And walked in and asked one of the employees, I am looking for a pair of running shoes. And then he kind of looked at me and scoffed, like, okay, well, how much are you running? And I said maybe 1 to 2 miles or something. I didn't really know. And like the whole attitude was like,
no, that's so rude.
It is rude, but actually a lot of people still have that experience when they go in. I don't have to go to running stores anymore, because I just get my shoes sent to me by Lululemon.
Yeah, they just get delivered in truckloads now.
Yeah, literally, I have so many pairs of shoes, and like, had I been a different person, I might have quit. I might have, been so upset that I wouldn't be able to go back into a running store. But I was like, can you give me my shoes, please? And so he comes out, he brings me a size 11 shoe, because I also have big feet, apparently, for a woman, but actually lots of people have size 11 feet. I think it's 42.5 or 43, and then I had my shoes, but I was still proud of myself that I was, number one, able to buy my own shoes, number two, that I was using them to do this thing that I loved. And I used those things for 2 years. I didn't know anything about shoe life.
I don't think any of us did. Like, none of us did. I remember that first pair of shoes, I think the rubber was all worn off of the bottom. Yeah, I found them in my parents' basement recently, because they don't throw anything out, which is actually terrible.
The story you just given, and in general your story throughout the book, it's a fantastic example to people. I always find that with respect to running clubs, people don't come because they're not runners. Well, you're supposed to come to a running club so that you can learn running, not after you've learned running. And people are reticent to come because, it's a tribe and I'm not a member of the tribe. Well, you don't get to become one until you come in. So come in. And I wish, more people would, if anybody's listening to this podcast, they should take your example and get yourself into a running club. You can do it. All you got to do is walk through the door and say hi.
I think a lot of people are afraid, rightfully so, because they're not always, if they don't run a 7-minute pace, and I'm talking in miles, or an 8-minute pace, or even a 9-minute pace, very often they get left behind, or or people again scoff at them or have something to say or just kind of ignore them. That is, I would say, the number one reason why people don't join running clubs. I won't join a running club because I had one running club in New Jersey, and it saved me in many ways when I taught in New Jersey, because they did it the right way. We started out together, everybody ran their own miles and their own pace. We checked in with each other when we passed each other, and we would finish all at the same time. And sometimes if I was a quarter mile behind everybody else, somebody would come and run me in. Like, how cool is that? That doesn't happen a lot. And so I find myself I am very lucky to have experienced those things. And a lot of people don't have access to that. And so this is a message to running clubs. If you say in your advertising and in your marketing that you are pace friendly, be pace friendly.
Yeah.
Find a way to be pace friendly and include the people that are slower, include the people that are new, who don't know what they're doing, include the people that run walk, because again, maybe that's the only way they can run. And include them. And if you want to be exclusive, say that. See how many people join your group.
Yeah, I think I think that's the thing. And also just like, I guess, respond to those people, because sometimes, they'll probably inquire, but maybe they won't get a response either. I know that, like, we're part of a running club, and it's just like it's a club mostly of marathoners, and so sometimes we'll get inquiries like, oh, I can run up to 6K, or I can run up to, whatever, 8 kilometers or something. But when we're out on the road, like, a lot of times the runs are like much further than that. But what we'll say oftentimes is, well, you can come to the track workout, because then everybody's together on the track, because we're just running around in circles. And so that's usually what they'll end up doing first, is they'll come and try us out on the track, and then hopefully stick around. But yeah, it's hard, because I think that if you can get like 1 or 2 people to join, then the rest will come, because then there will be people to run with. And in the end, like, that's what people join clubs for, I think, is like,
right. There's a social aspect.
Yeah. Not to just like, run by yourself, but have to wait until 6 p.m. to join other people for the start.
So you bought your first pair of running shoes, but very quickly in the book, we hear about you deciding, through various stages, ending in, well, I'm going to enter the Javelina 100. So you're not gonna.
I know, that was amazing. I mean, I can't even.
There were several steps in between, but very quickly you were sort of eating up the challenges and only getting one challenge done and then looking ahead. And so, what prompted you? I mean, this thing is, if people don't know the Javelina 100, it's a tough race. I mean, any 100 miler is a tough race, or 100 kilometers. I don't know whether you did 100 miles or kilometers.
100 kilometers.
It's darn tough. It's a trail event, and it's not a walk in the park by anybody's description.
No, by the time my blog, had reached some notoriety and I'd been featured in several media outlets, I was doing ultramarathons. I was doing a lot of 50Ks. 50K is my favorite distance. It's my sweet spot. It's just over a marathon. It requires mental fortitude more so than physical fortitude, and I think that's what I'm good at. And so I was at a 50K, or I was in a hotel room. I was with my friend Kelly. But we were sitting on this bed. For some reason, I'd seen online in trail and ultra running, that Facebook group that I was an original member of. I was one of the founding members of that sort of club. And I'd seen people talking about it and saying, oh, well, I'm signing up for the 100K, or I'm signing for the 100 miler, who's in. And so I clicked on the link and I was like, oh, wow, looks like it would be a cool and impossible thing.
Wow. So I'm impressed with the possible part. Like, that's incredible, because you're running 50K, and in my brain can't like even wrap itself around 100K, but you were sitting there being like, oh,
no, it was impossible. I said, no, it looks cool and impossible. Yes.
I heard possible. Sorry about that.
Well, because I already knew 50K was possible, but I couldn't really wrap my my brain around that. And I said, you know what? I'm going to plunk down the $400 or whatever it was. And I did it. And then I was like, what did I just do?
Boy.
And yeah, I didn't have a coach back then. I was just coaching myself. I was already a USATF level 1 certified coach, and so like I would create my own plans, and I would look at the Hal Higdon marathon plans and kind of like finagle them to kind of fit my lifestyle. And leading up to it, I think I did 5 50Ks that summer leading up to it, because I really wanted to be ready. And I did a 35-mile, very hilly, very difficult race down in Georgia. And 35 miles was the longest I'd ever gone before the Javelina 100K.
Wow.
And I got there, and it took me a very long time. It took me over a day. It took me 25 hours, 59 minutes and 55 seconds to finish 100K. I had taken a couple of breaks and had gotten disoriented during my third loop.
You started hallucinating, no? At some point you thought
I started, yeah. So the first 50K, amazing. In the daytime, I felt so good.
Mm-hmm.
Even did some videos and and posted them on Facebook, because and then I started out in the third loop, and it was immediately like, oh no, this is going to be really hard. And then it started to get dark. I lost my headlamp, burned out, and I'm in the dark with cacti surrounding me.
Oh no.
And and then it's like, yeah, that third loop took me a really long time, because I would have to wait for people to pass me with light so that I could follow them and use their light. But I wasn't as fast as them, so I would last maybe a minute or so, and then I would lose them. And then got later and later. Somebody eventually lent me their flashlight, that I did get back to him somehow, and then I was able to continue. But like, it's like the middle of the night, and I'm hearing things, and I'm like, oh no, it's javelinas. They've come to like attack me. They're attacking me. Oh no, they're gonna come out of the bushes.
Oh no. It seems like this whole hallucination thing, though, it's kind of common in ultra marathons, isn't it? Like, and especially at night.
Because it's dark, you're in a sleep state, the moon hadn't fully come out yet. And I didn't really get where I was in time and space. And so yeah, I kept hearing these growling sounds, and I'm like, oh no. And I would ask people, did you hear that? Did you hear those javelinas? And they would be like, no.
Oh boy. And you didn't have a crew in that race. Do you think, like, looking back, would it have been helpful to have a crew?
It would have been helpful. But actually I did have an impromptu, unexpected crew. A guy who worked for Ultra Fair, because that's all I had. I had a camp chair and a bag full of goodies and stuff and extra shoes. And he looked at me, he said, do you have a crew? And I'm like, no. He's like, I'll be your crew. I'm like, no, it's okay. I didn't want to like put anybody out. Oh no. He's like, I'll be your crew. And then on I remember coming back on my second loop, he said, do you need to eat? I'm like, and my default is saying, no, I'm okay, which is a horrible thing because I always need stuff. But he said, have a seat. I'll go get you some food. And he went and got me a plate of food. He's like, do you need anything else? Do you need to change your shoes? And it was so kind. That's really sort of emblematic of the trail running community. Like, we're all in this together. There might be your people that are not that great, but like most trail runners are like, we want to see people finish. We want to see people succeed. And if we have the time and energy, we can help them. Right. And so he like gave me food and drink. He's like, and I actually didn't have a pair of Ultras to put on. He's like, do you need a pair of shoes? I'm like, no, I got Ultras. Don't worry.
Nice.
I should have taken the shoes, but whatever. I didn't know yet.
Maybe he was like trying to sponsor you on the spot. He was like, oh,
I don't think he works for girl. But yeah, and that was the nature of that race. And so during that third loop, when I finally got to the Jackass aid station, which is the one in the middle, and it's a party. It is an absolute party, and like it's kind of like an oasis in the desert. And I think that's the point, right? Like, you're in this dark desert. It's cold. I was so cold. And I couldn't really take in any calories because I was so nauseous. So I get there and I sit down. I guess I looked awful. And somebody told me to sit down. They were like, have you eaten? They're like, your bladder and your pack is still full. Have you had anything to drink? And so they made me drink. They made me broth and first just plain broth and then broth with noodles, and then I had ginger candies, and then I just kind of started to like wake up like,
Oh, see, I tried that with
Does
Alan
happen.
at one of our races, and like it didn't work so well, actually.
Did anyone offer you any orange gummy dinosaurs while you were out there? 'Cause that's what Liz tried to feed me while we were out on an ultra last year, and it didn't end well.
No, poor Alan.
It actually ended with me in the med tent for an hour and a half at the end.
I actually, so that's where my drop bag was. And so I actually got to, after like I was revived, my tummy felt better, and they were trying to usher me out. They're like, you need to leave now. You need to get out.
Yeah.
You need to go. I got my drop bag and got my jalapeno chips, which is like another theme in my book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I like salt, because I needed the salt, right? And so I got those, and I felt better. And then I finished that loop. It took, still took me a long time to finish, but and that loop was very little running. And then I got back to the aid station. My friend Adrian, hooked me up with some more food and drink, and he's like, "Get out of here! You got one more loop to go." And I did that last loop, and it was hard. Like, I felt better than I had during the third loop. The sun was coming up. You could see the sky changing. And I mean, the loops are long. They're 16 and a half miles long.
Mm-hmm.
And so after I got to Jackass, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna do this. Oh my God. It's still so long. It's so far away. I got 8 more miles to go. Oh my goodness. And then I did a post on Facebook, and I said, I have the last half of the loop to go. I'm so tired. I don't know if my legs can continue. And my friends just poured in with the encouragement. It was so cool. My one friend, my one work colleague said, you eat 20 miles for breakfast. You can do this.
Oh, wow.
And that was it. That was it. And I checked in like almost every mile. I'm like 1 more mile, 6 more miles to go, 5 more miles to go. And when I was at one more mile, you could feel the cheering. Like I could like imagine the cheering from my Facebook, and people were following me, and then I got to the finish. I was completely delirious, but very happy. And someone grabbed my hand. They walked me over to a chair. I guess it was mine. Someone who I had been communicating with on Facebook, who said they would take care of me when I finished. And this was this person, right? And she took my shoes off. She's like, "Do you need me to take your socks off?" And then they dragged me to there was an interview somewhere.
Oh, nice.
That I had to do. Like when I listened to it, I'm like, oh, I was like, I don't even remember saying any of that. And I mean, it wasn't gibberish, but I was like, I don't remember doing that. And then like somebody brought me food, and it was so cool. And there were people there who knew who I was, stood around to cheer for me and to come meet me. And it was so like, wow. I just did 62 miles or whatever it is. Wow. That's when I knew that like, I mean, I can probably do more, but I haven't done 100K since, because I really like 50Ks, but, yeah, it was a cool feeling. It was, I felt very triumphant, and, my body it was so funny. For an entire month after the Javelina 100K, I was hungry and thirsty.
Oh, wow.
An entire month. The funny thing was that like I lost a lot of weight, but my body very quickly, when it was finished refeeding itself, it very quickly went back to whatever weight that I was. And I don't remember what that was.
Yeah.
And because it needed to be
that's your normal weight.
Yeah,
weight,
it's probably like your normal, yeah.
And it was so funny. And people were like, "Are you on crack or something?" I'm like, "No, I just ran this one race." And but also leading up to that, I had done a bunch of 50Ks and stuff, and very long runs and stuff, and
probably all catching up runs, with you.
Yeah. It was so funny. I was like, what is happening? Like nothing fit. And then gradually after a month, I started to feel normal again. And then it wasn't like extremely hungry or thirsty. But yeah, it was one of the highlights of, I think, my running life.
You haven't been tempted to do 100 miles then? This is sort of the ultimate for ultra runners, isn't it? I wouldn't know. I've never done it. 100K is
I haven't done 100K or 100 miles. We just hear
100
about
miles
this.
is not off the table yet. So,
Okay.
not off the table. Yeah.
Not
So,
not off the table with Mirna sounds like it's on the table. It's very much on the table. It's maybe not right in front of me, but it's on the table. It's just over there. I'm reaching over there soon.
You're just trying to slot it into your schedule. It's just not decided which one and what date it's going to be, but it's like on the to-do list.
Of course, if you go 100 miles, you're not going to go, I'll go down, do a 100-mile street run. You're going to go like Hard Rock or Western States.
No, it won't be hard. I crewed my coach at Hard Rock. No. I crewed my coach at Hard Rock, and crewing was so hard. And this guy has done it 5 times. And he does things like that crazy devil's race in Wales. That's 6 days.
Oh, yes.
And like, and
Dragon
you have
back
to kind
or
of do
something.
that one. And where you have to orienteer. He does stuff like that. Yeah. And I crewed him, and it was very difficult to crew him over because it took him 48 hours. It was the slowest time, but like, you know, it was during COVID, and you know, and he got in at the last minute, so he wasn't really able to train. But still, like, you know, being up for that long at night, I was like, oh my goodness, I would never get in, and that's okay. I don't want to do that. And it's 33,000 feet of vertical gain. No thanks.
Yep.
I do like my races, the races that I go to be an experience. So like when we did the Moab 3-day, that was an experience.
Yeah.
Like the trail itself was the destination. And that was my first big thing. My first big trail race after a 3-year hiatus. The hardest one that I had done. And it was where and actually an article came out today in Women's Running Magazine about sort of my comeback to doing trail races and after 3 years of injury. And it was just so glorious just to be there, also in that same community, the Trans Rockies community and the trail running communities. Yeah.
I know Alan's done the Trans Rockies twice already. Yeah, I mean, for me, that I love that multi-day format, because like you still get to run long, so you feel like really accomplished every day, and you do it like for several days in a row, but then you don't have to run through the night, which like I'm not sure I'd be a fan of. You know, I used to be a night shift worker, and like I don't miss that. I don't miss that, you know, when you were describing going overnight and like that sort of period of time where you feel just like, because you're supposed to be sleeping, so you're a little like like just not feeling all that great, and then you kind of reawaken when the sun comes up the next morning. Like that's kind of how it is when you're night shift.
It's so magical though, like if you're out there and like suddenly your body wakes up again, even though you haven't had an appropriate amount of sleep.
So strange.
You know, it's so the whole way that circadian rhythms work is amazing.
Running into the dawn is quite beautiful, but having to go through the night,
that's
I'm just a price you have to pay to experience it, sort of thing.
I'm not sure I want to pay that price. That's the thing. I mean, you never know, right? Because I guess in life, like, you can never say never, but for now, daytime running is kind of what I want to stick to.
Same.
No, you've got lots of followers. I mean, you're a social media personality these days. You're because you're an inspiration, and you've also got a whole bunch of sponsors that we said, you know, partners. I don't know if that's partners is probably the appropriate word. Does this place sort of expectations on you? Because, you know, you said at one stage, you in your book, you were getting anxiety because of the amount of pressure of work and children and stuff that you're having to deal with. And now you've gotten yourself into a point where you've got this massive following of people watching you, and also people who are invested in you.
Well, you know, it helps that I'm not a full-time teacher anymore. I don't teach in school. And so that part of trying to balance work and life and this other thing that is now my work, that was difficult. You know, having to travel and having, you know, sponsor obligations to be, you know, when you're expected to make appearances and to do a certain amount of like social media stuff. And so like, it's the same. I have bigger sponsors now. And it does require a lot of work, requires a lot of travel. It requires a lot of meetings and a lot of fittings, and which is it's cool because I, as you know, make their offerings for plus size people, larger. and more in tune with the kinds of things that we do. You know, we don't all want cotton. We don't want cotton tights. We want tights that are technical, that are sweat wicking, that will help us get to the top of a mountain just like anybody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, because previously that's what that was, we would get the subpar clothing or apparel that whose expectation was that we weren't doing the same things as serious athletes in quotes. But I am a serious athlete. Like I like to get out on a trail and summit, right? And if I only have subpar clothing, if I have cotton tights and on a jacket that doesn't fit, you know, that doesn't keep me safe.
No.
So along with the sponsorships, which, you know, seems glamorous, and I'm not gonna lie, it is glamorous. That part is, but it's also it does come with a lot of work, a lot of expectations. I'm never home. And
as you described before we started recording.
Well,
Yeah.
we've noticed this isn't the first time we've tried to get you on the podcast.
And sometimes I suddenly have to go to a different country.
Yeah.
But again, it's work that I enjoy. I get to, you know, when I was leaving teaching, I had a meeting with one of my superiors, and I admitted to him that I was scared. I was, you know, I wasn't, you know, what if this doesn't work? What if it, you know, what if I don't know what I'm doing? And he said, Mirna, this is just you teaching, but in a different way, on a different platform. Because I've been a teacher for 18 years, and that was, you know, my identity. And that's how I look at it. It's a teaching platform. It's an educational platform. It's also entertainment, and that's fine. I'm a performing artist. I don't know if you read in my book that I'm a singer.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
You know, and that's one of the things that I do. I love being on stage. I love making people happy. I love transferring the joy that I have to other people, and I think I do that on my social media platforms as well. But yeah, that was it. It's a teaching platform. And having relationships with these brands allows me to spread that message even further.
So in fact, you don't feel stressed or anxious about expectations.
Oh, I'm always stressed. I'm always stressed and anxious. Okay. Always. I have an anxiety issue that I did not acknowledge back in 2008.
Yeah.
But I carry a lot of anxiety, but you know, I've been dealing with that and working on that. And you know, it kind of comes with the work. You know, being in a public space all the time, and in a public arena, and also like really holding close my close friends, my family, and you know, trying to have routines when I'm home. You know, and so yeah, it's I wouldn't say it's a balancing act, but it's just knowing what I need. But I'm so honored. I'm so honored. Like, who in a million years would have thought that Mirna Valerio would have a brand partnership with Lululemon? Who in a million years? Not me.
Yeah.
And I love them. You know, they're really good to me. I hope I'm really good to them. You know, if that's the way that they see our relationship. And we're doing really awesome things together. So, and that's really cool. You know, again, and also with LLBean and Garmin, I got to be in one of their short documentaries, and you know, Hydro Flask, all of these brands that I get to work with. Darn Tough Vermont is their local brand, but you know, but they're global. You know, I get to wear their socks. It's so cool to be able to do that and to be a representative of these brands.
Yeah, I don't know if you were the influence, but I did notice, like, because I get, you know, the Lululemon emails, because like, who doesn't love Lululemon gear? And I noticed that their models are more diverse now than they used to be. I mean, because it used to always be, you know, like I don't know, the 18-year-old
skinny white chicks. It was all like skinny white chicks who were a certain age. Yeah, but they've been doing a lot of work since, you know, probably since 2018. I signed with them in 2020, but they had started the work back then, you know, to sort of change that narrative about who they were and looking to become more inclusive. And so I definitely am part of that. I don't know if that's the reason, but like, I'm definitely part of it. When I see myself on the side of a building in New York,
that's amazing.
You know, sporting the new shoes, it's pretty cool.
That's extremely cool.
That is. So I mean, with being in the public eye so much, I mean, it probably comes with also some negatives. Like, do you do you have any negative experiences? I mean, you
Oh my
probably
goodness.
do, but how do you deal with
Many,
those?
many negative
And
experiences.
what kind of what kind of things do they say?
Look, some people are jerks, right? A lot of people are very good, and that's most of what I receive. But just to give you an example, back in 2017, when I was doing a 50K and I was being filmed for this REI documentary, which was supposed to be about a Black lady in the woods, like doing things, running in the woods. That's what it was supposed to be about. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It was celebrating this Black woman getting out into the woods and running, trail running and stuff at a race that I was using to train for Trans Rockies. As I'm finishing up, or as I'm starting my last loop, my last 5K to finish 50K, I get this awful email because I'd taken my phone out. I was going to take a selfie. I get this, and I saw an email pop up. So I read the email, and the email is what this film opens up with: "You are a liar and a fraud." And, of course, before this all happened, when my story was in Runner's World, when my story was in NBC Nightly News or CNN, and I had been on CNN 3 times that week when this email came in. Maybe the guy was mad. He was tired of seeing me. I was also on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire that week. So and so but before then, even with all the incredible praise and encouragement and the people saying thank you for being out there, putting yourself out there for us, and thank you for letting me see that it's it's okay, that my daughter, who is plus size, who wants to run, that's the right thing for her. I've been getting messages about, oh well, she's lying, or she's only running to McDonald's. I don't know if you've seen my latest
I saw your Instagram
post
yeah,
about me
yeah.
running to McDonald's, because I ran to McDonald's while I was in Vancouver. and it was like a lot of disbelief, sort of violent disbelief, not physically violent, but violent disbelief about someone who looks like me. You look at me now, I have fat arms, I am not thin, and despite anything you might see, the TRX hanging down in my apartment, you might think I'm lying and that those are just props, right? That's what a lot of people think. Oh, she doesn't really run. I do run walk, so when people see me walking, they're like, oh, you're not really a runner. So I got a lot of that. I still get that. I still get things like, oh, I put a post of me and my friend up just recently when we were in Patagonia, and of us running downhill. It was such a beautiful moment. These two women, we were friends. She and we met through running, and we're running down this hill in this beautiful expanse of scenery. And some people, not all people, but some people could see was the fact that you guys are huge. Oh, poor rocks. I bet they passed out after they did this video clip. And this was one of these multi-day things. One day we had done 6 miles. The next day we did 5 miles in the morning and 4 miles in the afternoon. And we were doing it. And that's all some people could think. And, whether they were trying to be humorous, whether they, that they just couldn't wrap their heads around these 2 fat women running downhill, doing on a trail. So we get that. It's a lot of violent disbelief and unwillingness to see us as runners. And so I get that. I got that back in when my stuff was became more public, and I still get it now. Although I don't really read a lot of comments. I read the comments on my platforms. I don't read the comments on other platforms. When people write about me, or because I know that I'm going to see something awful, and it still affects me. Even though I know who I am, that is not going to stop me from running. Yes, I have emotions, I have a heart, but so, going back to the REI video. So while I'm doing this thing, this guy writes this awful email, with a lot of expletives, accusing me of trying to kill people with this idea of fat acceptance. And, I can walk faster than you can run. You are too overweight to run. F you, all these things. And while I was stunned and kind of traumatized, because I am actually doing the thing that you said that I don't do, that I'm faking, my fake running videos.
Yeah.
Who gets up every day, dresses in running clothes, and goes out and makes a fake running video, right?
It just sounds so ludicrous.
For
It
years
is
and years
ludicrous,
and years.
absolutely ludicrous. You know, and so he writes this email, so I read it, and my friends were like, put your phone away. No, you're doing a thing that he says you're not doing. Let's finish this race. Because they had come to join me in my last loop. And these friends, one of them was my friend Kelly and the other was Ariel. They had signed up for the 24-hour version of this race and had cut out after 2 loops and got cupcakes. And so they were waiting for me to finish. It was very funny. And so I said, you know what, not before I screenshot this, and I'm going to screenshot it. I'm going to put it on Instagram because I want people to know the kind of stuff that I get. This was the worst. It's still the kind of the worst thing that I've ever gotten.
Yeah, I watched the REI video as a prequel to this, and I was quite shocked at the beginning because I didn't know that this is how the video would start, with this sort of terrible negative comments from the internet.
And it wasn't supposed to, because when we got to the end, the filmmaker Sarah Menzies said, "Congratulations, she filmed my finish. Congratulations, you did so well. Such a hard day out there because it was sleeting and windy and very cold, and then sunny and then sleeting again." Kind of like Boston 2018. And
sounds a little miserable.
And she said, "Yeah, it was absolutely miserable." And she said, "I'm so sorry about that email you got." So because she had, while she was waiting for me, she was scrolling through Instagram. And she said, "If you want to talk about it during your interview, we can." I was like, "Well, I'm not going to want to talk about it." So she's like, "Okay." So, but what's the last thing, a couple of weeks later when she interviews me, she's like, "Can you take out your phone?" So I'm like, "Why?" She's like, "Can you read the email?" And I was like, immediately kind of re-traumatized. And that's how it starts. Now, and she put a little bit of this into her initial, what she initially sent to REI. And they came back with, "We need you to recut it. We need to see more of this trolling, because it's really important for people to see that." And so she recut it, sent it to me a couple of weeks before my book came out. And she's like, "Well, it's not my artistic vision, but I guess, it's good." So I looked at it and I was like, "Oh, it's great. It's amazing. Like it's amazing, So the night that they posted it on YouTube, it like immediately got 100,000 views.
Wow.
And then it went to 200,000 within a span of hours, and then 300,000. And my family in Brooklyn was watching as well. They're like, "What is going on?" I'm like, "I don't know." And it really struck a chord with people, because a lot of people had been either like been verbally attacked in that way, or that their families would say stuff to them about being fat, and they would just completely demoralize. And so and also REI ran it as an ad on YouTube, so it just pop up. And people, because of that first 10 seconds, people were drawn in. And people would write me, they still write me, "Look, this came up as an ad, and I never watch ads. I skip ads. But this one was so compelling that I watched it." And so it was really amazing. And that,
I wonder if it's also like some people's fears. If you're a bigger person, it plays right into their fears. It's like, well, that's exactly what I thought would happen to me if I tried to start doing it.
Or anybody who's been told that they can't do something, or they shouldn't do something. I mean, it doesn't even have to be running. It doesn't even have to be weight related or anything.
But then it does happen, right? Then it does happen.
Yeah.
So what do you do when it happens, right? Here's a prime example of what to do when it does happen, because it's going to. People are going to say stuff. They're going to think stuff. You are going to think stuff about yourself. And you have to have the power within yourself to say, "Okay, well, you can think what you think. I'm going to keep doing what I need to do for myself," even if you need to say that to yourself, right? And so I think I've actually never verbalized this. This is the first time I've ever really thought about it in this way. I think that's why people loved it so much, because it is your greatest fear coming to fruition. So what do you do about it when it happens? So I have this thing. This is how I deal with anxiety. I have a conversation with myself. What's the worst thing that can happen? That's probably not going to happen, but what's the worst thing that can happen? What's the okay thing that could happen that I'd be okay with? What's the best thing that can happen? Right? And most often the worst thing doesn't happen, but sometimes it does. So, and what am I going to do when the worst thing happens? How am I going to survive it? And I think that's what happens. And it takes a community of people around you. It takes inner fortitude. It takes your friends, your family, those that you hold close to you, to help you get through these things, to let you know that you're okay and that you can keep going. I already knew I was going to keep going because I was almost finished. I wasn't going to let some guy whose name I left up in my Instagram post. I wasn't going to let some guy, and people found him. They found him really quickly, and they were like, well, he's nothing to look at. Say things like that. Do you want us to show up at his house? No, I don't. Please don't involve me in that. No. But it was very illustrative of like how to get through something like that, right? And thank you for allowing me to suss that out in words, because I'd never thought about it in that way, and I always have a lot of words to say.
It's cool. That's very cool for us, because you've spoken to so many people how often about all of this kind of stuff, and to think that you said something that's unique on our podcast, I'm proud of that.
Yeah, me too. And I think it's also super important. I don't remember if we're talking about it on another podcast or if it was just me and you, Alan, but like, I think, sometimes the difference between you actually being able to achieve your goals and not is the people you surround yourself with, because you need to have, I guess you seem to have that, because in your book you talk a lot about your family and your friends, and you have friends and family that support you and believe in you, and that might just be the difference between your accomplishments and you wanting to accomplish something but not believing in yourself enough.
Yeah, and my family's awesome, and they know that I do crazy things, and they're like, okay, well, that's just Mirna on the mountain again. Okay, we're just gonna let her do her thing. And but they're supportive. They're like, oh wow, that's so great that you're doing that. Be careful. I would never be able to do that, but like, it's so cool that you're doing that. They'll come out if they can to my races. My very first 50K, my mom was there. My mom, my stepdad, and my friend, they came to like be my crew, even though you don't really need a crew for a 50K. And they were there, and it was like every time I came back into the main aid station, and they were there, like it was such a relief to my heart and like a boost to me. They knew what I needed, and they didn't shout stupid niceties at me. They were like, okay, what do you need? All right, great, get out there, bye. And I love that about them, because they know me. Yeah, but like sometimes you don't have your family, sometimes you don't have a big crew of friends, and so you're the only one that you have to believe in yourself. And so there's that too, right? But it definitely helps to have a community, and if not family, chosen family and friends.
Do you have any I don't know, maybe any tricks that you use, like when you don't have your family around you and you are somewhere else, or you're feeling down or whatever? Any tips for the rest of us?
I don't often call on music. I am a musician, but like I don't often use music when I'm out the road. I never use music when I'm on the trails unless it's at night, and I just use it to kind of like keep me aware or something. But I remember at the Moab, that second day, which is the longest day, and I really didn't know if my body was going to be able to handle it, because I hadn't gone over 10 miles in a very long time. And so I sat in my car, and I was listening. I was trying to listen to all my sort of hype music. The women singing about power and strength, right? So Jill Scott, Beyonce. There was a lot of Beyonce, and but I sat in my car also so that I wouldn't have to talk to people, because I needed to be in my head. After the first group of people left, because very often people know who I am, and I am so appreciative that people want to come up and say hi, but I also have to get mentally prepared. And this was one that I absolutely needed quiet in my head and space. And so like I'm listening to Beyonce, I'm listening to her song Move, and it has two parts to it. And the first part is this kind of like very beat heavy thing, and then the second part is, this is how I move, this is how I move, this is how I live. I can't remember the lyrics. And so yeah, this is how I move. And for some reason it just unlocked a lot of emotion. This is how I move. It's how I prefer to move. And that just that song put me in such the right place for that. It was 17.7 miles for the half pint, and I was the last finisher, but it was my very best day out there doing that long climb. Remember that climb?
Yeah.
It sucked. But I was like, you know what? I'm not going to have any expectations, but this is how I move. This is how I prefer to be. This is where I prefer to be. And I'm with the people that I prefer to be with. And it was so powerful. And I couldn't believe that I was crying in the Toyota that I had rented in the desert, Yeah, and it was so cool. So when there are a couple of songs that I do turn to, the Jill Scott song, which is Golden. And I'll tell you really quickly that during my book tour, because I went on a book tour, not everybody gets to go on a book tour. It was my very first stop, and I was in Framingham, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. And that same day, I had done a very big campaign for JCPenney and gotten paid a lot of money for 7 hours of work. And it was the first time that I was like, oh, well, maybe I should leave teaching. But I was just in such a state of awe because I had gotten to do the thing that I do best. I'm a performer, so I was on camera. I got to talk. I got to run trails in a snowstorm. I got to do yoga with Jessamine Stanley, who was this plus size Black yogi, and that was my day. And I got to be a performer again. And then it was my first my book tour stop. And I'm in the hotel. It was a Hampton Inn. It wasn't a great hotel. But I'm in the store. I'm about to be at REI. They're showing the film. I'm talking about my book. I'm talking about my whole experience. And I could not believe that I was having this moment. I'm like, I'm doing a book tour. And I just got paid an
Must be
enormous
surreal.
amount of money. It was so surreal. But while I was having these thoughts, this song came on Apple Music, and it was Jill Scott, Golden. It goes, hey, oh, yeah. And it's just this like really inspirational song. I don't do lyrics in English. I only do lyrics in other languages. So like I never know what the words are. So give me a song in French or Russian or something, I can sing it to you. But anyway, and it was just so joyous, and I was like, wow, I just felt this like power and something like surged through me. And every time I listen to that song, that's how I feel. So I was listening to that song and the Beyonce song, and it's just, so those are the songs that I call upon if I need something extra. When I finished the 2018 Boston Marathon, I was in such a bad mood. I was also sick. The weather was horrible.
Yeah, I ran that race as well. I was in that race.
Awful.
I ran the whole race in a garbage bag.
Yeah, I was I have a little bit more body fat, so I wasn't like freezing, but I was sick. I didn't know I was gonna have the flu the next day. And I was feverish, and like there was and I had just gotten over some injury, but I did it. And when I got in, I was sponsored by Highlands Naturals at that point, and they were the anti-cramp sponsor at that time. And so like we had an after party, so I went into the party, and so that was my entrance song. But I because I'm a classical musician, I listen to I'll listen to Schubert or Puccini or Verdi or something like that. Like when I do need music to put me in the right headspace, or like get my focus off of how dark it is, or or how bad my feet hurt or something like that. So yeah, so I do use music in that, but only when I absolutely need it. That was a very long way to get back to your original question.
That's okay. We do long podcasts.
Yeah. Also, you during your explanation, you brought up languages. So the thing is, in the book, I noticed like there were little phrases here and there in French and also in Spanish. I don't know Spanish, but I'm guessing it was Spanish because it had those like upside down question marks. So...
Spanish.
How many other languages do you speak?
Well, so I can speak French. So Spanish is the one that I'm fluent in, and then French. My husband is West African from Burkina Faso. He thinks that he taught me French, but he didn't teach me French. I learned French as a student in in the Conservatory of Music. Right?
Did you say your husband was from Burkina Faso?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And a little anecdote. Does he come from Ouagadougou?
Ouagadougou.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
A small anecdote. It's a dad joke. When I have dinner with my when I have dinner with my family, when we go out to dinner, or when we be anywhere public, and the waiter asks something like, okay, here's the menu, here are the specials. Any questions? If anybody says to me any questions in a public forum, I always say, yes. I have a question. What's the capital of Burkina Faso, formerly known as Upper Volta? And all my kids go, Ouagadougou. because they've heard me say it so many times.
It's the funny thing is that that's the question that when we were at immigration and he was getting his green card, the interview had been very stressful, and like he forgot how to speak English, and I forgot when we met. Like it was like one of those like sort of cartoonish experiences. And the very last question was, Miss Valerio, so where's your husband from again? He's from Burkina Faso. He said, what's the capital of Burkina Faso? And I said, Ouagadougou. And he goes, well, can you say it 10 times? And I was like, okay, Ouagadougou, Ouagadougou, Ouagadougou. And I'm counting on my fingers, Ouagadougou. He was like, I was just kidding.
I was joking.
and then my husband got his green card, and it was
You're like, thank God I didn't have to say it the other 7 times.
I'm like, really, guy? I mean, I could have said it 10 times, no problem, but like, really, guy? Not funny.
I can just imagine, like, he's probably all serious and everything too. So
very serious, very, it was absolutely deadpan, because that's how the entire interview had been. I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna be serious too. Ouagadougou, Ouagadougou.
So when you decided sort of eventually to give up your real job or your stable, your safe job, was that sort of was that the moment where you consciously decided, I'm going to be the Mirnavator, I'm going to be a social media, inspirational, promotional person? That's going to be my new life.
Happening.
Okay.
It was already happening. Okay. Like since 2015, and I was teaching in 2015 I was in Georgia at this point, right? I'd had that moment of questioning whether or not I could sustain something like this when that night I just talked about doing the JCPenney commercial, and then also having my first book tour stop. But then a few months later, as contracts were about to come around, so that was the JCPenney thing was December of 2017, and contracts were coming out in February of 2018. And I was sitting in my classroom with the lights off and having this conversation with myself. Should I stay, or should I try this new thing? Of course, I'm not going to have any benefits. I'm not going to, you have to find a place to live. I don't know where my kid's going to go to school. How am I going to get health insurance? How am I be happier Canadians? Be happier Canadians. I'm just saying. And all of these things, and I had enough money to support myself for the next year, which was because of all of the endorsements and the this and that and speaking and stuff. So I knew I was gonna be okay for a year, but would I be okay after that? And so as I'm having this conversation in my head, literally just sitting at my desk, there's no TV, there's no computer on, there's nothing. I'm just sitting at my desk. A student walks in. His name is Chris Davis. He was a fairly short 10th grader. And he wasn't in any of my classes. I taught Spanish and music, and I was also the director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. He didn't do any of my school or anything like that. So but I knew who he was because he was a African American kid. I knew who they all were because he was part of my job. And he came in, and I immediately thought something was wrong. Like, who said something to you? Who do I need to talk to? What teacher do I need to curse out? Whatever. Yeah. No, he's like, hey, Miss Valerio. I'm like, hi, what's up, man? and he's like, well, I just wanted to say that I really love you, Miss Valerio. Oh, thank you so much for saying that. And he's like, I really love that you're here at our school. The school is Rabun Gap Nikuchi School, so I'm really glad you're here at Rabun Gap. But I just wanted to tell you that I don't think you belong here. And I said, come again? What? He's like, no. He's like, what I mean is that I've been watching you, and your star is rising, and you must follow it.
Oh my God, those are some wise words for such a little
sort of angel messenger.
Young, yeah.
And this, he was, wise beyond his years, and I said, oh, I'm never speechless, but I was speechless. I mean, like, what do you say after that? I'm like, wow.
Especially Chris, you were thinking of
yeah. I'm like, this is weird. I was speechless, and I'm not normally speechless, and I said, thank you for thank you for seeing that in me. Thank you so much. And he said, you're welcome. And then can I give you a hug? I gave him a hug, and usually when I tell a story, I had to be like, it was pre-COVID.
Yes.
we could hug each other.
Yeah.
So I hugged him, and
it was
and
appropriate.
it was not public school. Yeah, not public school. So, we could hug we hugged our students all the time. So I hugged him. I said, excuse me. And I said, thank you. Thank you so much. And he's like, you're welcome. And then he goes, okay, Miss Valerio, bye.
That was it. Out he
Wow.
goes.
And I'm like, wow, you're gonna drop this nugget right in front of me. Wow, what is happening in the universe?
drop.
If you wanted a message from the universe, that was it.
That was it. That was absolutely it. And then so I immediately knew what I needed to do. So I called my head of school and I tried to set up an appointment. And he said, oh no, come over. I have a free free space now. So I go to my head of school, I walk in, and he says, I already know what this is all about. I already know. We can't keep you. Because they had been so wonderful and generous. Like I spent a lot of time away from school.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time traveling and doing other things. And I said, please keep doing this. This is awesome for the students to see, in real time, you living this dream that you didn't even know you had out. Just tell us when you're gone so we can get a sub. And so he said, you know what, this is awesome. I'm so happy for you. And your son can stay here next year. This is a private school. It's very expensive. And, we'll only charge you the teacher rate, the faculty rate, which is a significant discount. And I'm like, wow, like things are just happening. Like, wow.
They're actually facilitating your move.
Yeah.
All the excuses just disappeared.
They all just like, I couldn't say no.
I have a saying that might be appropriate for this situation that you've just described. I use this saying usually on the start line of a marathon when the weather is slightly overcast, not too warm, just the right temperature, the marathon's flat, you're fully hydrated. And what I say is, guys, God has removed all of our excuses.
I like that.
And I guess that's your situation there that you've just described. Somebody has removed all of your excuses for not doing it.
Yeah, and it was funny because I had to move out of my campus house, and my friend suddenly comes up and says, hey, you can stay with me in Atlanta, which is close to the airport. And so I lived there for the summer until I figured out where I was going to live. And so everything just kind of worked out. And then I was able to, and still am able to do the things that I was doing back then. And it's been a really incredible trajectory. It's been really cool.
I think that's amazing. That's such a great story. I mean, in a way, I guess running brought you your dream life, even though it's, not in the way that most people, because, kids will say, oh, I want to be like a pro runner. I mean, in a way, you're living a dream life. It's just not by becoming a pro runner, but it's through running.
Through running. And when I have to explain what I do, I'm like, well, yeah, what do you do for a living? I run. And I ride bikes and I ski.
That must take some explaining. Yeah, that's a little complicated.
And people are like, wait, what? What? Explain,
Although you've written a book, so you can say like, well, I'm an author.
I also, well, you know what, because I do so many different things, sometimes people don't believe me. I'll say sometimes when the situation calls for it, I'll just say, oh, I'm a writer, or I'm a sponsored athlete, or I'm a public speaker, because that's where a lot of my income comes from, and then somewhere along that conversation, oh yeah, so like in my book, you're an author too? Oh, and then when I was doing this concert, what is going on?
Renaissance woman. That's what's going on.
I think that's amazing. Yeah. It's as if like you took all your passions in that moment and you always channel them into something that you can like almost live through. Because it was like, even when you were younger, because I remember you really liked art and music, and you went to these schools that had all these things you could try, and you tried them all, and you ended up like really wanting this job at the art museum as like a 17 year old. But like to actually get that job, it sounded like it was pretty difficult. I don't know if that was really a student job, like, because it sounded like,
it was the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and it was an apprenticeship program. And so, yes, it was difficult to get. There were several interviews, and and I didn't have any experience in working, but I had worked a lot, but I hadn't had any experience in working in a museum. And so I actually went my last interview happened while I had 104 fever. And but and then I got to work in the concerts and lectures hall because I was a musician, and so it was really cool. So like I definitely go after things that are interesting to me, that I'm curious about. If you look at any part of my life, it's all about curiosity. Like whether or not I want to do 100-mile race, I'm curious about whether my body will be able to do it. I think my body will be able to do it. Will my mind be able to do it? Will my mind be able to carry me through those moments where I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to do this anymore? And my body has performed in the past. So like, I'm like, okay, well, maybe it will. So it's all curiosity, even if I don't really know what I'm doing. It's all about like, what happens on the other side? What happens around that bend?
yeah, that seems to be a recurring theme in your book as well. Yeah, because even teaching, it seemed like while you were teaching, like you were 100% committed. I mean, you just loved teaching music, it sounded like.
Love teaching Spanish, music, anything they threw at me. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, like that's another part of what I continue to do today. I started it while I was teaching middle school in 2000. I'm going to say 2004, 2005, and I haven't stopped. I train large outdoor brands and anti-racism and social justice, and so like it's definitely a continuing a thing that I do.
Probably should just ask you, before we start winding up, just ask you, one of the things we come across, Liz and I come across in the club, is people who say, "Oh, I'm not really a runner." Yeah, you are. We just ran together. You're a runner. That's it. End of story. Shut up. There are people.
Yeah. So people have this whole narrative and idea of who or what a runner is or can be, and very often they don't see themselves as one because they've never seen anybody like themselves, or they're just starting out, or they're restarting, and like maybe they don't run every day, or maybe they can only run 2 or 3 miles at a time, and they don't see themselves as a runner, because all that's to it is these people that do marathons and ultramarathons, or who run very fast, right? And you don't see like the normal runners. So yeah, I think that's why. But now social media is a really great help. I think if you curate your account to see people maybe who look like you, fine, have aspirational things up there. You want to be a sprinter, fine, have some sprinters up there, get some tips from them. But also like fill your social media with people that are that are inspirational, that that do the things that you do. There are tons of people out there, tons of accounts, tons of ideas for how you can get started or continue your journey, or like there's so much. The internet offers so much in that way, positively.
Yeah, it's really a great place, but like you said, you have to make it that. It's almost like you have to start unfollowing the accounts that are too negative.
And that's we are accountable to our own selves. Like if we want to change that, we have the power to do that. Go ahead and change your social media, make it happy.
People want to get a copy of your book and follow the story for themselves. Do you want to direct them anyway? Or
sure. I actually really love bookshop.org because they give money to local bookshops whenever you order something from them. It might take a day or two longer than Amazon does, even though my publisher is owned by Amazon. And like, if you need to order by Amazon, do that. But bookshop.org is a really great way to support local bookshops, and also to support the author, because I still get paid in either way.
Fantastic.
Or there's the audiobook. I don't know if you guys listen to the audiobook. No. I perform the audiobook, and it's about 10 hours long, and I do all the accents.
Amazing.
And it was that's a whole other hour-long conversation about how that happened. But I perform my own book, which is not usual for memoirs. But I'm a performing artist, so I got to do that really cool.
I'll bet you loved that.
It was really intense, and it was a performance, and I was working with a Hollywood director and
Yeah.
producer,
Wow.
and it was so cool, and it took 5 8-hour days
Oh,
to record the
wow.
whole thing. Yes,
To
5
record a
8-hour days.
10. Wow.
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
Because they edit it right there. They edit it right as you're doing it.
That's incredible.
Isn't that cool?
That sounds like a process too, though.
It was a whole process.
It's almost like writing
And
another book.
Yeah, and I had to like reread stuff and like get re-traumatized about stuff, and also had to take breaks when I was reading about my uncle. I had to take a long break after that to be ready emotionally to continue with the book. But it was cool. I got paid to do it, and it was awesome.
That's amazing. I have to say, like, you were talking about your uncle, but like I think the saddest part for me was your mom and your like aunt, but she wasn't really your aunt.
My aunt, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was so sad when you guys lost her, because I felt like, especially that bond she had with your mom, and now your mom was like in the world by herself. I was just so sad. So where can people find you if they want to follow you or read your blog or any of those good things? Of course, Instagram.
Well, I don't blog anymore, but I haven't blogged in a long time. I'll say that. I'm thinking about starting blogging again, because people are craving more long form writing now. Unlike before, I have lots of sort of video content and visual content that I could add to that. So that would be cool. And I like blog writing. It's fun, and I don't have to edit it too much, which is great. So look for that in the future. I am on Instagram. That's my primary social media platform. I'm also on Facebook. A lot of people still are on Facebook, people 40 and older. So I'm very active on Facebook. And I have 3 pages. I got my personal page, which is pretty locked down tight for family and friends. But I also have 2 professional pages, Fatgirlrunning and Mirna Valerio _ the Mirnavator. But like mostly Instagram stories, Instagram reels. The algorithm is being kind again after they tried to manipulate it so much. This is being kind again, so my stuff is being seen more and more now. So yeah, join me there. Very active there. And then I also I speak a lot. I'm doing more racing and stuff. I'll be in and hosting retreats. I host retreats called Slow as Fuck Trail Running Adventures. And I don't advertise them on my website, but I do. There's mostly word of mouth. And I gather people together to come and be in spectacular places at the pace that we need to be at. So we get to do really cool things that aren't necessarily open to us, in other running camps or other running experiences. So yeah.
Did I hear you make reference to the possibility of another book at some stage?
Yeah, I'm working on I'm almost finished with the draft of a novel. So fiction, completely different from my memoir. About a middle-aged Black lady that goes on a backpacking trip, a solo backpacking trip. She is not me. It's a fictional character. I feel like I have to say that. Like the fictional character that may share some similar characteristics with the author.
Makes it easier to write about that way.
And will be played by Halle will be played by Halle Berry in the movie when it comes out.
Oh no, she's too skinny. Yeah, she's too skinny. And nope.
You hear that, Halle Berry? You're too skinny.
Skinny, sorry. Give other people work.
Okay, we'll look forward to seeing that.
Hopefully, that'll be. It's definitely not anytime this year, or probably next year.
But I'm sure you'll have that on your social media once it's released, right? So.
Oh yeah.
Okay, it's not going to be a secret.
Everybody will know.
Perfect.
Should we just give our summary views, and then we can thank Mirna for her time? Okay. So Mirna's book, A Beautiful Work in Progress. The book is a great read and well structured. It pitches you straight into the exciting running challenge. So you open the book and whoa, you're in the tough running challenge and in amongst the effort and the event. And of course, then you go, who is this Mirna girl? And you want to know more about her. And then that comes afterwards. It creates the expectation and the desire, and then fulfills it. Mirna is extremely well educated, a very cultural person, and she chooses to run for health and love of the trails. despite not fitting the typical stereotype. I should have done this in the intro, really. This is a book for all runners, I think, and people trying to achieve their objectives. In particular, it's a great book for anyone who needs some extra inspiration or motivation to keep going. If anybody's feeling, oh, I'm running out of steam, or this is not for me, or I can't, or any of those incorrect thoughts, because you can read this book. It's going to allow you to motivate yourself and take that next step on your journey. One thing we didn't talk about was there are a couple of photos in the book of Mirna in action, certainly in my version, the electronic version that I read. But I think afterwards, like me, you'll want to go browsing on the internet or on the website, or go and watch the REI movie, The Mirnavator, social media to learn more. And I think, following Mirna is just going to enable your own running efforts and motivation. So read the book. It'll help you on your journey, whatever journey you're on.
So I guess I'll echo that. I really enjoyed learning about Mirna in this book. I've been following her running adventures on Instagram, but there was just so much more to her that I discovered in the book, like that she's a teacher and a mom, that she's artistic, she taught music, and how she met her husband. I really enjoyed it from that perspective. I think this book can also be motivational to anyone who's struggling with their identity as a runner, which you've probably also heard during the podcast. But if you don't see yourself as an athlete, Mirna is here to tell you that you are. Just a last point, and this one's going to be a little bit long-winded. So I'm on Goodreads, which is an app where you can keep a list of books that you want to read or have read, or that you could keep like a list of future reads or partially read or whatever. And you can also rate the book, and you could leave a review. So I don't actually often check the ratings for books that I'm reading because I guess I don't really want to have an opinion about the book before I even start reading it. But I ended up reading some of the reviews for this book. And there were several people that thought that Mirna mentions way too much about being overweight. And I just thought I should mention that, yes, she does mention it, but only because she's judged by people based on this characteristic all the time. And so it's kind of a big part of her life. And although Mirna didn't grow up thinking about weight, and she doesn't let it affect her confidence, it's very much part of her everyday adult existence. And so she can't and shouldn't really avoid mentioning it in the book. So I just kind of thought I'd put that out there, just because it was kind of strange that people kind of were fixated on that. But yes, I mean, yeah, it does talk about that, but I wouldn't say that it's overwhelmingly so. Like, it's mentioned, but it's because that's part of her life.
I think the one thing that I'm fixated on with respect to Mirna, and it came up during the book, and that's why I've mentioned it a couple of times, is her flawless skin. Why don't people mention that? I mean, I can understand why the guy in the book mentions it now, now that I've seen you in real life.
It's true. I mean, too bad we don't do video podcasts, but
you should be in skin commercials or something.
I'm telling you, it's the lens from my webcam.
No, I have a webcam and my skin doesn't look nearly as perfect as yours does. Yep. So no, not buying that, right, Alan?
No, we're not buying that.
Okay.
Own it. Own it.
I will own it. I will. Thank you.
You own your plus size, or however you describe it. Own your flawless skin.
Okay, we'll do.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from us doing the outro, we just before we do that, we'd just like to really, really thank you, Mirna. I feel like I've just spent a couple of hours just getting recharged. I'm going to get out there and eat up the run tomorrow with Liz.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If we could possibly bottle whatever it is that you got, it would sell for a lot of money, because you seem to ooze positivity and energy, and you're the sort of person that my daughter always talks about hanging out with. She always says you got to hang out with people who are going to energize you and be positive and be can do. And I think she'd love to hang out with you.
Let's do it. I'll drive up to Laval.
Well, she's a gym owner, so you can go and visit her gym. I'm sure she'll give you a workout.
There we go. I got to go up to Canada and get some Tylenol and Advil anyway, because it's strong. So and some
Well, now you're
antibiotics.
so close. Now you're so close. Just hop over the border.
Do your expensive pharmaceutical shopping in Canada.
Yes, exactly.
So thanks
Thank you.
so much for your time.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Running Book Reviews. Big thanks to Mirna for spending time with us today and for providing a review copy of the book. If you'd like to leave us feedback about how we can improve the podcast or want to suggest a book that you'd like for us to review in a future episode, please leave us a comment on social media. We are Running Book Reviews on Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter, we are reviews_running. Please also follow us on social media to find out about new episodes when they're released, or you can just subscribe to the podcast on your favorite streaming platform. If you have been listening to the episodes for a while and are wondering how you can help us out, there are a few ways. You can share the podcast with a friend, spread the word, give an episode to your running partner to listen on their next solo run. And you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts if this is how you listen to your podcast, or you can also rate us on Spotify out of 5 stars. And we are also on Buy Me a Coffee, where you can just go and sign up. If you provide your email, then we will email you if ever we post any little extra stories or bloopers and things like that. So that's fun sometimes. There's not much on there yet, but hopefully it'll.
Well, there's a lot of
time.
talk about your marriage and
That's
that
true.
kind of
There was
stuff.
a little bit of that.
That's quite cool. That's all from Running Book Reviews. Bye for now.
Bye.